prospectively, we need to do our job looking retrospectively a little bit to understand the certification process. That's been the focus of this committee's long-term investigation since March. And so I want to touch on that a little bit. You said today and you said yesterday at the Senate hearing that that's Boeing, we have made mistakes and we got some things wrong. Can you name 3 specific mistakes Boeing made in this process?
Congressman, I would point out implementation of the angle of attack disagree alert. We got that wrong up front. The implementation was a mistake, and we've subsequently fixed that going forward. Secondly, we've learned about the MCAS architecture, the changes that we've already talked about. Clearly, we have some areas to improve there. Thirdly, I would say in the broader area of communication, documentation across all of the stakeholders, and doing that in a efficient and comprehensive manner, we've identified some improvements we need to make there.
Can you identify individuals then who made these mistakes within Boeing?
Congressman, across all 3 of those areas, these are large teams that work together across our company, our supply chain. We have about 900 supplier companies that work in our 737 supply chain alone. The FAA, other global regulators, airlines. So in each of these 3 areas, there are broad integrated teams. There are no one individual that makes decisions within these. These generally are engineering teams that build consensus with all of the stakeholders.
So does that make this an organizational or a cultural problem as opposed to an individual problem that led to these mistakes?
Congressman, I think it's important from an accountability standpoint. My company and I are accountable. That accountability starts with me. And our board recently took some actions regarding my position.
I was going to ask, how have you been held accountable through this?
Yeah. So, Congressman, to your question, our board has recently taken some actions on my position, and I fully support that. That will allow me, again, to focus even more on safety in our internal operations, and these decisions are directed at safety. I have also taken some management actions. We know there are still a number of other reviews underway, and as those reviews are completed, if we need to take additional actions, we will, and those will be firm. And in some cases, they're not individual actions, but as you pointed out, they're organizational or structural actions, and these are equally important. And we've recently announced changes to our safety review board structures to elevate them and make them more transparent. I now receive weekly data reports, very detailed level on our safety review boards. We stood up a new safety organization under Beth Pastor. She now reports directly to our chief engineer, who reports to me instead of being down in the businesses. Our board has set up a new aerospace safety committee that is chaired by Admiral Giambastiani. Just Friday, we announced the addition of Admiral Richardson, who has a deep background in safety. He'll be a member of that committee. And then we've also realigned our entire engineering organization. Roughly 50,000 engineers now all report directly to our chief engineer, who reports to me. And again, this will create additional transparency, visibility, and independence, all with a focus on safety.
So I can't help but think when I hear that, and when I read the JATR report and read the NTSB recommendations from September, and read the Indonesian accident investigation report, that there are changes that we need in how we certify aircraft and components in the FAA process, that what we have now went too far, and that we don't have a handle. We hold the FAA accountable. The FAA is supposed to then hold the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, accountable. I'm not convinced, based on reading these reports and looking at Boeing's own actions, that that's being done adequately. And I'd like to hear your view on do you agree with me or not?
Congressman, we believe there are also improvements we can make to that process, and as you're very familiar with the delegated authority process, That process we do think is very important to fundamental safety. It contributes to the 95% improvement in safety we've seen over the last 2 decades. But we need to make sure we have the balance right. And we support the reviews that have been announced on that. I think that.
Well, if I could, and I'll finish here, Mr. Chair. If the bookends on this are what former, acting Administrator Elwell said at one time, it would be $2 billion and 10,000 more inspectors. If that's one bookend, and the other bookend is what we have today, I think that we ought to be pulling out a book somewhere between those 2 bookends. Right now, we've gone too far. And with that, I yield back.
I thank gentlemen. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as a matter of fact, I want to kind of add to what my colleague from the state of Washington was asking about, and it's about the certification process.